Cool. You guys ready to start? Let's do it. I'm Jason Finkelman. I'm an immigration attorney. I'm going to be talking about the H1B Visa with you guys tonight. But before we do that, the most important person of this whole entire event we have to thank first, and that is the person who provided the pizza and who is making this all happen. And I'm going to let him do an introduction of himself. So take it away.
Thank you, man. What an introduction. I was going to bring beer, and that would have been a huge hit. So unfortunately, we decided to switch it out at the last minute. Maybe the next event we'll bring some beer and wine. My name is Zafar. I'm with a company called Luna Data Solutions. I represent the technology division of Luna Data Solutions. We've been in business for about 15 years. We're out of Austin, but we support a lot of startup clients and companies, as well as enterprise companies, locally as well as nationally. We recruit for a lot of these companies. I'm a recruiter with about 15 years of experience in this industry, mostly in Austin, but I've also supported a lot of clients on the East Coast and West Coast and nationwide. Jason and I got together and we decided to do something like this to give back to our community, because I myself came here about 20 years ago as an immigrant. I've been through the process and have gone through many of the challenges and issues with employers and whatnot, and so I can relate to a lot of the issues that you guys are going through. And so Jason and I both feel that this is important for us to give back to our community, to invest in you guys, to help you become successful, so eventually you'll go on to become, future employers and hire tons and tons of H1B folks. Yeah. So a little bit about my company. We specialize in working with startups as well as enterprise level companies. We recruit for programmers and engineers and developers, as well as creative folks, creative and marketing folks. We work with a few of the companies here at Capital Factory and Tech Ranch and WeWork and a few others. We sponsor Tech Breakfast every month. We also sponsor South by Southwest events and Austin Technology Council and Austin Sim and a bunch of others. We sponsor about a dozen, 24 events and organizations around Austin related to technology focused. And so if you'd like to come talk to me afterwards, I would love to speak to you about what you're looking for, what your current work status is, what kind of companies you're interested in getting into, and maybe I can share some advice. I have a good insight into the Austin tech market and the talent market, what's going on here. As you know, in the IT market here in Austin, the unemployment rate is below 3.5%, and Seattle is below 2.5%, and San Francisco is below 2%. So companies are finding it more and more challenging to find good developers and mobile developers and programmers and engineers. So it's become a huge issue, not just here in Austin, but across the country. So if you're an employer, I can give you some advice on how to help with your talent search. And if you're an employee, come talk to me and I can tell you what are some of the top technology trends that are happening out there and what kind of employers are hiring out there. So I'd love to talk to you guys. So again, thank you all for coming. Please tell others about these talks. Jason has about 3 or 4 other events planned between now and April. If they can't come, obviously if they miss this one, they can come for future events, and his website has more information about upcoming events that we're doing at other venues around the city. But again, thank you all for coming. Enjoy the pizza. If you haven't signed up already, please sign up on that piece of paper. That's a good way for us to keep in touch with you. Also a good way for Jason to communicate with you, and grab one of his business cards and grab one of my cards on your way out. Thank you again for coming, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you very, very much for the pizza and for that introduction. That was very, very, very kind. So my name is Jason Finkelman. I'm an immigration attorney. I've been practicing for almost 10 years. And the focus of my practice is employment-based immigration. So focusing on how to get you guys and other international people work visas to work for employers. Doing a lot of work with international entrepreneurs, startups, helping those individuals find options to work here in the US. I work with students, I work with families, anything immigration related is sort of what I do. But today, I want to focus on the H1B work visa, which I'm sure most of you are somewhat familiar with. And I really want to make this a casual, informative, useful event. This can get super technical, this stuff. And I want you guys to walk out of here really with all of your questions answered and really a full understanding of how the H1B visa works. So I'm going to talk, and I'll try to go through it fast and hit the big points of it, and I will take questions at the end so everyone's questions will get answered. If I'm saying something that totally doesn't make any sense or is not clear, just raise your hand and I'll figure out a way to make sure it makes sense. Cool? Cool. Sweet. What do we got here?
Down is forward.
Down is forward. Boom. H1B non-immigrant visa category. Okay, so here's how this works. The H1B visa is a non-immigrant visa, which means it's a temporary visa, good for up to 6 years. Initially you get 3 years. You can apply again for a 3-year extension for a maximum of 6 years. That's the length of the visa. It's in a specialty occupation. This is called the specialty occupation. So what is a specialty occupation? It is a job that normally requires a bachelor's degree. Okay? So what is a job that normally doesn't require a bachelor's degree? Probably barista at Starbucks, right? But accountant, a software developer, systems analyst, things like that are jobs that typically require a bachelor's degree and would qualify as an H1B specialty occupation. The job candidate, you, have to have at least a bachelor's degree in that general field to apply for the job. So your employer says, okay, we're going to sponsor you for an H1B visa for this job. This job normally requires a bachelor's degree. You have at least a bachelor's degree in that field, and that's really the basic requirements of the H1B visa. Okay? Let's go to the next slide here. This is a employer-sponsored visa. This is one of the critical slides here. So an H1B worker is tied to that employer, which is to say, if that employer is sponsoring you, you are tied to working for that employer. You cannot work for multiple employers. Okay? The H1B is job specific to the title and the duties. So that's to say, if you come here and you're working as a software developer and your duties are developing software, whatever those things are, if you were to change to a different title or a different job duty, typically you would have to amend that H1B. So you're really locked in, at least for that 3 years, to working in that job with those job duties. The first big question, I'm going to try and hit the questions that I think most of you guys are going to have, and that is, can I self-sponsor myself for an H1B visa? The answer to that is generally no. The H1B is an employer-sponsored visa, so that is an employer sponsoring for you. Now, there are limited circumstances where if you had a business here in the US and you had hypothetically a board of directors that really controlled and owned that US business, and they were the ones sponsoring you for that, even though it's your business, if you can show that board of directors owns and controls that US entity, that may work for H1B purposes, H1B visa purposes. Question? No? Wage requirements. Employer must pay a prevailing wage. So historically what happened with this visa, people were like, sweet, I'm going to get an international worker in here, I'm going to pay him nothing and he's going to work for me. Not really fair, right? Department of Labor said, that's not cool, you can't do that. We're stepping in and we are going to tell you what is the minimum prevailing wage in which you must pay this person. That wage is determined based on the geographic region you'll be working in and the job you'll be working in, the duties of that job. And Department of Labor basically has an encyclopedia of all the jobs that exist, and they basically say, in Austin, Texas, a software developer who's coming in with a bachelor's degree should make no less than this. Your employer, when they file that H1B petition, they're going to file what's called a labor condition application, LCA. And in that, they are going to sign a document and submit it to the Department of Labor that says, we promise to pay Mr. or Mrs. X no less than this wage, which is the wage set forth by the Department of Labor for that job. The employee cannot accept payment from another source. So that employer is the one paying you, can't be another person paying you. It is that employer that is the one paying you. The other huge question I get here is the employee cannot reimburse or pay the employer for the H1B. And I think just in that statement right there, I crushed a lot of souls in this room that just were going, oh, but I'm gonna go to my employer and be like, hey, you don't have to worry about it, I got it, I'm gonna pay you, I'll reimburse you for it, just sponsor me, I just need you to sponsor me, right? Can't do it. There's a lot of fraud, there's a lot of issues with people being taken advantage of because of that. And US Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, says no. Employer must pay for all of the fees, all the legal fees and all the government filing fees for that H1B petition. If you get caught reimbursing or paying your employer for that, big trouble, you're gone. That H1B is taken away and you're going home. So if that was a thought in anyone's mind, don't get involved with that.
Is it time for questions or should
Sure,
I?
yeah, if you got a question, sure.
But can you negotiate with your employer that maybe they can pay for it, but then discount it, like from your salary?
Good question, no. Good question. No, so it's basically them saying, look, we are sponsoring you as our employee to come work for us. We have a duty to pay you this much, and we have a duty to basically hire you and sponsor you for this. We're responsible for you while you're here. If anything happens, we're responsible for you. Go ahead.
Okay, so that makes sense. But does that also include like lawyer fees and stuff?
Exactly,
So
yes.
it's like the whole cost?
The whole thing. We'll talk about one small fee in a slide in a little bit, but consider it as all the fees.
Okay.
Okay? The H1B cap. H1B visa, 85,000 visas issued annually. They all become available on April 1st to begin working on October 1st. So here's how it happens. I'm playing you the movie. April 1st, all the attorneys, all the employers, everyone sends in the H1B petitions for you guys. 85,000 visas are available, broken down into 65,000 for people who have at least a bachelor's degree, 20,000 for people who have a master's degree. In years where the economy wasn't so good and there wasn't a big demand for STEM workers and things like that, okay, 85,000 visas on April 1st, maybe they are used up sometime in May, June, July. As many of you guys know, that's no longer the case. Last year, on April 1st, anyone want to guess how many visa petitions were received on the first few days?
233,000.
Man, why don't you guys come up here and do this? Yeah, 233,000 over, right? So think about that. Last year, if you were filing your H1B petition, you had less than a 35% chance of getting that visa. Why? All those visas are taken, 233,000. USCIS says, okay, we're putting out a press release. Please do not send any more H1B petitions in. We're going to take the 233,000 we received in the first week. We're going to put them in a computer-generated random lottery. We're going to let the computer select the 85,000 that are going to be processed. The rest are sent back to the employers. Psh, sorry, try again another year. Think about that for a second. Less than a 35% chance of getting that. The year before, I think it was 172,000 over like that. So the trend is getting harder and harder. My guess this year, it's going to be even harder. I don't know what that number is, but the trend's going up. Individual, yeah.
Sorry, the breakdown between non-master, NOP, and do you have numbers on that? On like if the percentage was higher for, obviously, like you know the 20,000
Mhm.
that have masters or higher, what was the breakdown of that? Were they providing that information at all? Or was it just
Good
saying-
question, and I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I don't know the answer. But to that point, individuals who have a master's degree or higher actually get 2 plays in the lottery. So basically how it works is if you've got a master's degree or higher, they're gonna say, okay, the 20,000 in excess of 20,000 that we got, we're gonna have a lottery for those people first. If you're not selected in that, we'll give you a chance to play with the 65,000 here. Okay? So you get 2 bites at the apple if you've got a master's degree or higher. Yeah, let me get him and then I'll get you.
Is that only from a U.S. institution though, or?
No, so you do not have to graduate from a US institution. You can graduate from a foreign institution. How that works is you would have to get your academic credentials evaluated here to say that they are equivalent to at least a US bachelor's degree. Typically, they are.
So if, let's say that I apply and I don't win the lottery, do I have to pay and do the whole process again next year, or?
Great question. So if you're not selected in the lottery, remember, again, it's the employer who's selected,
Oh, yeah.
technically. If the employer's petition that he's filing on your behalf is not selected, that employer would get his money back, minus the legal fees, but he would get the government filing fees back, and then yes, they would say, try again another year. Okay, did everyone get that? Yes.
How much is that filing fees?
Great question. So we're going to break that down in another slide. We'll talk about it now. So the filing fees are, the government filing fees are $325. One is $500. The other one depends on the size of the employer. It's either $750 if you have less than 25 employees, $1,500 if you have more than 25 employees. So I hope you guys are doing the math because I'm not doing the math in my head right now. There's a new filing fee this year for employers who have, I believe it's a certain percentage of their workforce is H1B employees. I think it's like 50 or something like that. If your employer has 50 or more H1B employees, they also have to pay an additional $4,000. And then there's what's called a premium processing fee, and we'll talk about that in a second. So whoever's doing the math, you can shout out the number, or we'll get to it in a second. So any questions about the cap? Any other questions? So there are certain organizations that are actually exempt from the cap, which means they can apply for an H1B at any time, and they don't have to worry about that 85,000. Okay? Those are college and university employees, related or affiliate nonprofit entities, university teaching hospitals, schools, things like that, nonprofit research organizations, and government research organizations. So if you have a job offer from one of those organizations, you're good to go. You don't need to worry about the H1B lottery. Okay? The other issues with cap exemption are if you're moving now from one of these organizations, if you get an H1B through one of these 3 cap exempt organizations, and now you're going to a private employer, you got to worry now, I got to go play the lottery. Okay? If you're getting an extension, once you've gone through the H1B lottery, you're good. So if you're extending your H1B thereafter, or you're changing to another H1B employer, you're good. You don't need to worry about the lottery. Cool. So let's break down the process a little more. So the first step in the process is this labor condition application, the LCA. So the LCA is usually takes about 7 days to process. And this is important because for any of your employers that are going, well, think about the H1B, you know, it's April 1st, now it's beginning of February, like, come back to me, we'll talk about it a little bit. If you wait too long into March and you don't file this early enough, you may not have this prerequisite step taken care of and certified by the Department of Labor by April 1st. So I tell most people, you want to get this done by the latest the 2nd week of March. Because by the 3rd, 4th week of March, someone's coming to me, I'm going, okay, but I don't know if we can get this certified, this LCA certified by the Department of Labor in time. So it's going to be dicey. Not saying it's impossible, you know, but it usually takes about 7 days to get that part taken care of. Going back to the fees, so again, $325, $500, either $750 or $1,500. There's that new $4,000 fee. So the totals there for the government filing fees are either $1,575 or $2,325, right? Plus $4,000 if you're an employer with 50 employees, of which 50% are H1B visa employees. There's another thing in here called premium processing. I'm going to dispel a little bit of a rumor. So premium processing is a service offered by USCIS that says, hey, you know what? You pay us $1,225, we'll give you an answer on this in 15 days. It's optional, you don't have to pay us, but if you do, we'll give you an answer in 15 days. So people go, oh man, let's pay this extra $1,225 because they'll give me an answer in 15 days and I'll know, and maybe it'll give me a leg up in the lottery. Rumor, false. Doesn't give you any leg up on anything. There are very, very limited circumstances, usually applies for students who need some type of work authorization to pay that premium processing fee. In vast majority of cases, it's not worth it. Going back to your question, that is the only fee that may be paid by an employee. Okay. But in most cases, it's not going to apply to you guys. Last step. So typically, I'll get your question in 1 second. The last step there is once that visa is selected. Last year it was about 6 to 8 weeks, I think it was, when we heard who was selected in the lottery and who wasn't. And basically you find out if you're selected in the lottery because the ones that aren't are sent back to the attorney or the employer. So I go, well, these ones didn't get selected. Anyone else who's not in this probably got selected. Then a couple weeks after, you would get a notice that says, hey, we've accepted it, we're processing it now, meaning someone's sitting there looking at your application, and that process takes about 3 to 5 months. Not a big deal, right? Because April 1st, can't work until October 1st. Okay? Questions about this? There was someone in the back. Did you have a question? Yeah.
Are the fees the same for the non-profit and governmental agencies?
They are. They are.
Jason, I got a question too.
Yeah.
In the lottery,
Yes.
do they hold any additional applications to the side to fill in case some of the 85,000 that the computer selected don't qualify and they get kicked out?
Love it. Love it. Great question. And I'm going to make you crestfallen because our wonderful USCIS says, yes, every year there's some that we actually select and they get denied. So Reason says, well, then can't someone else get that H1B visa? And USCIS goes, well, yeah, but we're not going to do that. So each year there are, and they've now over the years have grown to thousands of extra available H1B visas that just don't get used. So, yes, it's a bummer. Second part of that question, and we'll get to it in another slide. Any individuals in here from Singapore or Chile? Too bad. Singapore and Chile, out of that 85,000, we're going to take out 6,800 and reserve those for only Chilean and Singapore nationals. Why? They've got a nice program for U.S. workers, and we reciprocate with them. That's the short answer. Okay?
And that's part of the 85 though.
That is part of the 85. So 85,000 minus 6,800, those are going to Chilean and Singapore nationals. Those are called H1B1 visas. Cool? Yeah. Sucks, guys. Trust me, we can talk about it afterwards, and I do a lot of advocacy work on behalf of all you guys to try and say, hey, this is a no-brainer. These are intelligent people we should be bringing here, and unfortunately, that's not the case. Yeah, Elise?
So how long does it take to become a Singapore or Chilean?
Good question. Do you know what? Someone actually asked me that recently, and I was like, I should actually look that up. But people have asked me that before.
You'll have a better chance.
Okay, so let's talk about briefly for any students in here something called the H1B Cap gap, okay? So this cap gap occurs when an F1 visa holder is the beneficiary of an approved H1B petition, but his or her F1 status and OPT work authorization expire before October 1st. So what previously used to happen was there's this gap, right, from when the F1 status to the beginning of the H1B status, and it would create this big sort of immigration consequence, I guess. So DHS, Department of Homeland Security, created this rule called the H1B Cap gap. So if you're an F1 student and you're on OPT, and your employer timely files the H1B, April 1st, request a change of status, which would be from your F1 status to H1B, requesting October 1st start date. And it is selected in that lottery, you would get this cap gap provision. I'm going to show you an illustration in the next slide that would allow you to work here until October 1st. Previously, there was a problem with that where people were going, okay, cool, I got selected, but now I got to go home and wait to come back October 1st. One thing Department of Homeland Security did right was they're like, yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Let's give them this provision. So here's what that looks like as an illustration. So if, for example, this EAD employment authorization document, your document that allows you to work, let's say hypothetically expires on July 25th, 2016, if your employer timely files that H1B on April 1st, you would actually, and it's selected, right, and it's selected in that lottery, you would get your OPT extended to allow you to work here in the US from July 25th to October 1, 2016. Does that illustration make sense? Yeah?
That's only if you get selected.
That's only if you get selected. So going back to this, if you're rejected or if you're selected and it's denied for some reason, you're done.
How long, do you know how long do you have after your OPT expires to remain in the States?
After your OPT expires?
Yeah.
So typically after your OPT expires, it's about 60 days to sort of wind up and get ready to go home.
Sweet.
But the issue there becomes you can't really work because your OPT is expired, right?
Right.
Yeah.
What if you don't know if your H1B got, or the employer, the H1B got picked or not, and your EAD expires? Like for example, mine expires on June 18th, and what if I do not know if my H1B got picked?
Can't work until you know whether that's been selected.
Okay.
You'll likely know, again, 6 to 8 weeks, I'd say, you should find out whether you've been selected in the lottery.
Okay.
Okay?
So for example, in the case that I'm working already here, but with a visa, I have already a visa.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know, I find another company that is willing to sponsor the H1B.
Mhm.
So what would be, what is the scenario? I mean, in this case, what will happen? Because I'm already working with a visa, but I'm filing for to work with another company, which is trying to sponsor me the H1B.
So if you already have an H1B,
No, I don't. He's not H1B.
okay, so you would be getting a new H1B, it's all of this applies. So basically, you find an employer here, even though you're on a work visa already,
Yeah.
you're saying, please change my status from whatever my current status is to H1B, and then cross your fingers, you gotta go through the lottery, likely lottery, and hope you get selected.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I just wanted to
Okay.
be sure that, okay, if, because I already have a visa, so if I file for the H1B, if there's any conflict, I know that, you know, the immigration
No
services-
conflict. So it's called a change of status. So technically, once that happens, it's just change in a computer. So if you're here as an F1 student, once you're selected on October 1st, you change to H1B status.
So, related to that, if you get denied for the change of status, can you just carry on with the let's say a TN visa or something? Can you just keep going with that?
You can, so long as you still qualify for
Qualify.
that visa. Yeah, just because an H1B is denied, doesn't mean your current status is denied. So
Right.
long as that status is still valid.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And kind of related, so.
Sure.
What's the difference if you have the H1B, can you like transfer to it?
You can. So once you get through that lottery, once you've got an H1B, you're good to go. So you can change to another employer so long as that employer sponsors you. So that new employer says, yes, we're willing to pay all those fees all over again, but we don't have to worry about the lottery.
Oh, okay.
So at any point, we can file this new H1B, change of employer is what it's called.
And is it 6 years regardless of the number of?
No, so the 6 years is cumulative. So we're counting any H1B status you already have. So if you're here 2 years, you would get 4 years with the new employer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right, a couple more slides, and then we'll open up to some more questions. H1B portability, I think that sort of answers your question, which we just talked about. You can port to a new employer once you already have your H1B status. Individuals who are terminated, either by the employer or you quit, Currently, you have about 30 days to sort of wind up things and get out. There was a proposed rule actually last week that says let's actually codify that and make it 60 days, but that's not currently the case. But I anticipate that to be the case coming up soon, about 60 days. That 30 days is just, it's not actually the rule. The rule is you have a, quote, reasonable period of time to wind up everything and leave. Immigration practitioners say, look, you got about 30 days to either find a new employer or go home. That's our rule of thumb.
Hey, Jason?
Yes.
On the portability, are the fees for a new employer anywhere near what they were to get the H1B in the first place?
Exact
Get that
same.
change of stance, it is.
Exact same.
You just don't have a lottery, but it's refiling of all the same stuff and the same fees
Bingo.
all over again.
All over again.
Wow.
Yep.
Jason,
Yes.
can you file for those fees any time of year? You don't have to wait until April? April's just a lottery, right?
Right, just that first, think about it this way, H1B April 1 lottery is new H1Bs.
Okay.
Once you got an H1B, whenever you
Any time
want.
of year.
Any time of year.
Okay.
You're not subject to the cap. So, playing the odds, some of us aren't gonna get the H1B, right? So what are some other options? Let's talk about these briefly, because this really is, I want this to focus on H1Bs and answer your questions, but a couple of the more popular options, E1 and E2, treaty trader and treaty investor visa. If you are a national of India, China, Russia, Brazil, forget it, doesn't apply to you. So I know I disappointed some people in this room, but this is how this works. The US has treaties with certain countries. It allows for individuals who are making substantial trade or a substantial investment in the US to come here and run that trade or run that substantial investment.
So that doesn't apply to Russia, right?
This does not apply to Russia. If you're from Russia,
Those four, all of them?
no, I'm just talking about the E1, E2.
Okay.
Just the E1, E2.
And that's super expensive, right?
Can be, because substantial investment depends on what the business is. The trend over time has been to make that investment larger and larger, to make it look like you're really coming to run a big investment here. It all depends on the size of the business and what the business is, but usually it's a larger number. And it also, because there's a lot of money laundering and fraud issues in that, it gets into a very long thing of tracking the source of funds. I think someone here tweeted out a picture once at Capital Factory of an E1, E2 visa that I did that was, I kid you not, 3 feet high
Oh, yeah.
for one person. So it's somewhere here in Capital Factory, somewhere
Yeah.
but they can get crazy. They can get yeah. I see your eyes. That's what I thought when I was putting it together. I was like, yeah. L1 is a very popular visa. Again, for all these guys, no caps. No caps, so you can apply at any time of the year. The L1 is an intra-company transferee. So if you are abroad and you've worked for a company in an executive, managerial, or specialized knowledge capacity for 1 out of the last 3 years, and you're coming to the US to work for an entity that has a corporate relationship with that foreign entity, and you're also coming here to work in an executive, managerial, or specialized knowledge capacity, you can come here under that L1 visa. Very versatile visa, nice visa. We talked briefly about the H1B one, Singapore, Chile, no one in here, sorry, you're privileged class if you were. E3, actually very popular. I don't know how many of you know Australians, but it seems there's a lot of Australians moving to Austin. E3 is essentially like a H1B for Australians only. Similar to the H1B, but only applies to Australian nationals. Lastly, the TN. Any individuals from Mexico, Canada? Boom, boom, yes, awesome. So, again, the TN is a great visa only for Mexicans, only for Canadians. Allows you to work in only certain job categories. It's a long list. You can Google them, the NAFTA job categories, accountants, I think there's some type of technical stuff, engineers. You can come and work for a limited time and get that visa extended indefinitely, so long as you can prove your non-immigrant intent to work here in the U.S. under TN. Yes?
So, I know for a fact that you cannot with the TN, but does any of these visas allow you to get a green card?
So, any of these visas may allow you to get a green card. that process is a longer, more difficult process. Think about this as your non-immigrant visa. USCIS says, look, you want to come to the US? You want to work temporarily? Okay, prove to me the criteria of these visas, and I'll let you come in temporarily 1, 2, 3, 4 years to work for that. Now, when you say to that employer, I want to be here permanently, I want to get a green card, USCIS says, whoa, 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 wait a second. You want to be here permanently in the US? That's a pretty big privilege we're going to extend to you. So we either have to do a test of the US labor market and see if there's any qualified, able, willing, or available US people who can do what you do. Or, and there's a long list of sort of exceptions and rules and things like that and get into it. But with any of these visas, yes, it's possible to come here and then apply somewhere later on down the road for a green card, either an employment-based green card or some other method.
Even with the TN?
So the answer to that question technically is it's difficult with a TN.
Okay.
But you can come here, you can work, you can get that experience. I sort of say to people, worry about that process later. Come here. If you really want to be here and you want to work, get that experience, see who you meet, be here at Capital Fact. Who knows what the future holds, right? I want to save that. It's a technical question, what you're asking, and I want to keep this H1B focused. But generally, any other questions? So I really just wanted to keep it as brief as I can. I hope I answered a lot of the general questions, but I want to open this up and make this valuable for you. Yes?
It's the H1B Cap exempt transfer.
Oh, sorry. I was looking at him, but you answered first. Go ahead.
Okay. Is the H1B Cap exempt portable to other, like nonprofits or universities?
I'm not sure. I understand.
H1B Cap exempt for nonprofits
Right.
or universities. Is it transferable or portable, like you said, to other nonprofits or universities?
If I understand your correct your question, you're saying, can you apply for a cap exempt organization and then move?
Onto a different one.
You can, but then you're subject to the lottery. So,
No, they're both cap exempt organizations.
oh yeah. You can move from cap exempt. Yeah. So long as it's a cap exempt organization, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome presentation, man.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Just wanna start that. I'm currently on OPT,
Uh-huh.
and I understand that STEM students get an extension for like another year or so. So what is there's a long list of majors that like are subject to that. It's STEM exemption. What if I'm not sure about whether my major qualifies within it? What if there's this one major that's like, hey, that's what I studied?
That is a question for the university. The university should be able to answer that.
Okay, cool.
I don't know, but that's a great question. Curious as to what it is.
What?
Your cool degree or your cool major.
I mean, like, I did economics and communications, and there's a digital communications and media major that's subject to a STEM exemption, so I can like.
That's talk to the university. They should be able to answer that question. That's kind of interesting. That's kind of unique. Yes.
So I heard different answers from different attorneys about
Uh-oh.
whether you can sponsor yourself. Because I'm having my startup, but I'm currently on OPT extension. So I heard one of the attorneys said that was the old rule that you cannot apply for yourself.
Yeah. Great question. One of the more popular questions, especially from people here at Capital Factory who are entrepreneurs and startups. The general answer to that question is no. The H-1B visa is not for self-sponsorship. Now, what could it look like, practically speaking, where it could work? Again, if you had a US company that you were willing to now give up control of that company, meaning you are giving up 51% of that company to someone else, or a board of directors, and you can document, hey, I have no control, maybe I don't have the ownership here, this board of directors controls me. They basically say when I come, what I do, what I get paid, all that stuff like that. It may be possible. There are attorneys, stuff like that I do, it is kind of on the cutting edge, But I've had success with those in the past if you can document that you're not controlling yourself. Because self-sponsorship is very clear. Oh yeah, it's my company, I own it. You can't self-sponsor yourself. No, that's not going to work. You can show there's a board of directors, and hey, they have control. Here's documentation of it. Here's the operating agreement, whatever it says. They're telling me what I'm to do. It might work.
So you have to be own less than 50% of the company, or is this something you think?
The employer-employee relationship for H-1B purposes is described, is broken down into ownership and control.
Oh.
And that's what they will zero in on without a doubt. So you want to make it really clear that there's someone else controlling me. I am an employee of this company. Okay? So it's a facts and circumstances test.
So how do you really find out? If you just file the H1B, do they check if you own the company?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah. No, you must establish an employer-employee relationship. And we can go off on a tangent on what a good attorney would do to establish for a regular company the employer-employee relationship. I mean, you can talk to Fred, sometimes the people I work with here. I mean, you know, having to show, oh, here's where I go, and here's where I work, and here's what they tell me I wear, and here's when I can go to lunch and things. USCIS is very, very old school. Unfortunately, immigration laws in this country are very archaic. And they picture in their head like you walking into work, punching your clock, sitting there with your hard hat, sitting here. It's the truth. It's the truth, and that's what they want to see. They sit there with their check boxes and mark that stuff off. So it's unfortunate, but yes.
So I was saying, I mean, let me evolve on that. I was saying that if a guy comes from Europe, Russia, France, Asia, whatever, and then starts a company here, and finds an investor, but still he or she would own more than 50%, say 60% of the company.
Who would?
The founder.
Uh-huh.
And then there is a couple of other guys who own like 20%, and then investors. Then the founder won't get the visa.
It's going to be tough. Think about it this way. Let's say in that hypothetical you say, I'm the founder of the company, I own 60% of the company, I want to file that visa.
Mm-hmm.
Put on your hat as the USCIS officer and go, wait a sec. This is supposed to be an employer-sponsored visa where you're the employee, but you own 60% of the company. How are you the employee? Who's controlling you? You have control of the company, right? It's difficult, it's challenging.
Okay, so are you saying that it's not possible?
I'm saying I wouldn't do that because I do not think it would be successful.
Okay, and what is the, I mean, I know that's not H1B question. What is the recent practice on the visitor visas? I mean, do they still allow to be for 6 months and then leave the country and then like in a week or so come back?
Yeah.
I mean, what is the recent, like 2-3 years?
Quick tangent, his question is what's the new rules or what's going on with visitor visas? And this is a question I get a lot, which is can I come here to the US and work on a visitor visa? How long can I stay? Those sorts of issues. No, you cannot come here and do any work on a visitor visa. People say to me next, but Jason, I'm not getting paid. Doesn't matter. USCIS defines work as anything that a normal person would get paid for, regardless whether you're getting paid. The answer to your question is on the timeline. Still, 6 months, you can get a maximum. You have to show that you have reason to be here for 6 months for business visitor purposes. And under the visa waiver program, that's also becoming more difficult too. So under the B1 or under the visa waiver program, because of things that happened last year in Paris and California, they're changing those programs and it is becoming very, very difficult now to come to the US for extended periods of time or trying to come in for 6 months, then leave for a day and come back in for another 6 months. USCIS is not stupid. They know people play games all the time. That's all they do. All day they're thinking, what is this game this person's trying to play with me? And they don't take kindly to
What's
that.
your recommendation? If you don't get your H1B, what should you do?
Unfortunately, there are not many options. We talked about in that last slide some of the other options. If you qualify, No? This one here, I don't know if I can blow it up again. Some of these other visa options might work, but if not, gotta go home.
A friend of mine is applying for an O visa. Which
Yes.
is for like extraordinary talents, cause he is a founder and he's also, like, looking to get that visa. How does that work?
Yeah, the O1 visa is a visa for aliens of, quote, extraordinary ability in the arts, science, mathematics, business. Extraordinary ability, guys, is a very, very high level. That's not to say you have to be the tippy top of your field, but you have to evidence with a lot of information that you've done something that really is remarkable. So whether it's patents or writing in international journals or speaking at big conferences or winning types of awards, if you can document with a lot of that information that you really are sort of top of your field, you may be eligible to get an O1 visa.
And let's say that you have all the proof to say that you're an extraordinary talent. Is that also similar to the H1B in terms of?
No cap, you can apply at any time. It's employer sponsored.
Okay.
You gotta find an employer who says, we need to bring in this person to come work for us, but no cap. So you can apply at
You
any
have to
time.
prove that you're extraordinary in your country or for the US?
You have to show your international extraordinary ability. So it could be in your home country, it could be in other countries, it could be showing that.
Intergalactically.
Intergalactic. It's right.
And
Is that
do
right?
they give a lot of those?
There's no cap, so yeah, you can, there's no cap on the amount of visas, so you can get it at any time.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah. Yes?
Alright, so you co-founded a company, well, you're trying to do that, you have less than 50%, you have a board of directors. How much revenue do you need to apply for an H1?
Another great question. Man, I thought I was gonna like cover all the questions you guys were gonna answer, but that's another popular one I get. Here's the answer to that. Technically, the law does not say that you have to show, for H-1B purposes, that ability to pay the wage that you're saying in the labor condition application, right? So backing up, in the labor condition application, let's say you're gonna be the software developer for the company. In that labor condition application, Department of Labor says, in Austin, a software developer, I'm making this up now, makes a minimum of $50,000 a year, okay? So one of the issues it's raised is, well, what if I'm a startup? What if I don't have that money to pay that? Technically, the law doesn't say you have to prove it. Practically speaking, USCIS does want to see some information that shows that you can actually pay this person the wage you're gonna claim, you're promising to pay this person. So, if you don't have tax returns, if you don't have already an established business, maybe you can get, put money in a bank account, maybe you can get letters from accountants, business plans, things that show potential revenue, contracts, signed contracts. As long as there's something that shows, hey, look, we have the potential to make this, and we can back that up, and maybe you get a letter from an accountant somewhere or a bank that says, yes, their business plan makes sense, we do believe that they can make this in this year. That I've seen is sort of reasonable for USCIS. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
What if you already have an H1, but you want to start your business on the side, and you already have those conditions?
Yeah, another
H1?
Another popular question, no. So you were tied to your employer, going back to, I think it was like the second or third slide, you're tied to your employer. And especially, I get this question a lot in Capital Factory and sort of co-working spaces. But yeah, but I met this guy and we're doing this thing, it's really cool, it's really sweet. Yeah, it's a balance test, right? So you don't want to get caught really where are you devoting your efforts, time, and energy, okay? So if, you meet with some guy once a week for a cup of coffee and you're talking about things, okay, maybe. But as you start to sort of move your time and efforts and energy to this side thing that you're going on, where are you really devoting your efforts and energy to? It's the side thing and not this employer. You don't want to get caught in that situation, because if USCIS finds out you're doing some side thing and you're not devoting your time to your H-1B employer, we're taking back that H-1B.
So you can't have more than one H1Bs at the same time?
The technical answer is that yes.
He's just looking for loopholes. This team.
I'm not surprised, man. I get these questions all day long. And it's a totally legit question. I think it's stupid, I think it's ridiculous, but that's the law, right?
Do
Yeah.
certain sectors get favored during that lottery, or is that?
No, another good question. So everyone's favored the same, whether you're working for two-person startup here or Facebook or Google, everyone's weighted the same in that H1B lottery. Yes,
Okay, so I'm currently on a TD visa.
okay.
So, and let's say he applies for the H1B visa, what would, like, it would-
Yeah, so her question is, what is the, if you, one of you in this room gets an H1B visa, what does your spouse get to do, or your children? So your spouse would get what's called an H4 visa, and your children would get an H4 visa. Unfortunately, that does not provide work authorization. So you get to hang out. That's it.
There was some talk about like changing it, and they have some sort of like a pilot program or something.
Yeah,
a
so
while
there
ago.
currently is, and again, this gets very, very technical, but if you're here after 6 years and you filed certain permanent resident applications, H4 people now can get employment authorization, but that's not for new H1Bs. We hope, because a lot of these visas, spouses can get an employment authorization card when they're here, so we hope that maybe in the next year or two, thank you, that H4 spouses will get work authorization, but currently, no, they cannot.
And could she get her own TM?
I'm sorry?
Could she get her own TM visa if she's an H4?
Sure, yeah. Anyone who's here as a spouse can always find a US employer that's willing to sponsor them for TN or H1B, yeah.
That was my question.
Okay.
I have a-
Yeah.
I've read somewhere that you can change your working status of the TD to you can work. Is that true, or?
If you apply for another work authorized visa, yeah.
But not in the TD.
No, the TD does not provide work authorization,
It's only TN.
only TN, yeah. I don't want this to go to the point where we're all sort of just like, what? So for anyone who's got to go or feel like this is sufficient, by all means, thank you so much for coming. Grab some more pizza, grab some more Coke, Sprite, whatever you want. Anyone who has more questions, I'll hang out. Zuffer, I want to thank again for putting this together. Let's give him a round of applause. His information is back there, his card's there, my card's there. Pick it up. If you have private questions you want to ask, you can email me, sign in the sign-in sheet. And if you visit my website and this wasn't sufficient for you for some reason, I'm doing like half a dozen of these things over the next month. So check out my website and you can come to another one. We'll answer some more. Oh yeah, and I
I just wanted to make a quick announcement. As you said, the Capital Factory, we have started a new international program where we made a soft landing platform to help international companies move here to the US. And part of that is helping all you startup founders and other people figure out these type of important questions, as well as questions regarding the investment, also regarding how do you incorporate here, there are many other challenges that you face. Immigration being the biggest one, but there's also other things that you have to consider as you're moving here. So we've designed this new program as a soft landing platform. It's called Touchdown Austin, to help international companies move here. So it's part of the reasons why we're hosting some of these events here, and we hope to do a continual series. Jason is actually one of our partners in the, so anybody that comes through and needs immigration help, we point them towards Jason, and he's been very, very helpful in the current companies that we actually had gone through the program. So.
thank you. And thanks to Capital Factory for hosting the event. Sweet guys. Thanks. Well, we can hang out, we can talk, whatever you want. I just didn't want to make this so we're all sort of falling asleep here. My contact information is also here.
He's raffling off a visa at the end of the day.
I know.
Jason, I got a quick question. So I wanted to get visa.
Yeah.
And I want to approach my employer about getting an H1B. What are the little, what is the way to kind of it's a tough question.
My answer to that is this. Very straightforward. It's so random. I don't want pressure, but I need to know, is this something you're willing to do? Because if not, that's yours, but then I need to move to a different employee because I need to be here. If you sort of dance around it, he's gonna go, well, let me get back to you, and you're gonna miss April first, and guess so it's like, hey, I need 5 weeks. And maybe you don't know the answer now, but tell me when I can get that.
Oh, it's
You're talking to someone, and then it's gonna be in the March, and you're like, right? You say, how about a week, 2 weeks? Get back to me and let me know. And it's cool, and I'm not pressuring you.